B is not feeling great. So, I'm gonna go through common behaviors, kind of that we'll see. It's more like developmental milestones, and then with the milestones, we'll talk about certain behaviors. And then as you guys have questions, just shout them out. We'll see what we can figure out together. But for the common behaviors, as I was preparing for this, I was like, what are behaviors? Because oftentimes, I think if we lose the purpose of a behavior, then we can look at things through a lens that's probably not true. And so we always say that behavior is just a window into the developing brain. Whatever the behaviors are that we're seeing, there's a reason that those behaviors are manifesting, whether that's the internal or their external environment. And so inherently, a behavior is not good or bad. Like a behavior is just a representation of what is happening. And it's really a sign for us just to see how we can best support our children. And so I'm going to go through a whole bunch of stuff, but really we always say like the most important part with behaviors is just what we call watching, wondering. Like one of our mentors, she loves the concept, and I agree, and I've adopted it. But it's like rather than trying to always change things, just taking a step back to just watch what we're seeing, just be observant, and then wonder what's happening. And I think we're going to talk about something when we get to the 4-year-olds that I think we maybe don't have that capability, because when we were in a stage of questioning, instead of helping us wonder, we were just fed answers. And so we'll talk about that when we get to 4-year-olds. But I have it starting at 1. Before 1, the primary thing, we were talking about the brain, I think last week. Like the primary thing before 1 is just to love your baby. The part of the brain that's most active from birth to 1 is the bottom part of the brain, the right half of the brain, and the inside part of the brain. The bottom part of the brain is for movement. The right half of the brain is for like imagination, exploration, which they don't have much of at this point. But the inside of the brain, I didn't really even talk about it too much last week. The inside part of the brain is the sense of security. And so in the first year, you are building a sense of attachment. And in preparation for today, I go back and forth. There's this really good book, I mention it all the time, called Hold On to Your Kids. And in the book, they talk about attachment and how attachment comes from, it allows children to explore. If they don't have a sense of attachment, then they don't ever feel like they have a safe, secure home base to then leave from to go explore the world. And so in this first year, essentially, and even just trying to think, and as I was going through this, like, gosh, it makes so much sense how whoever came up with this stuff came up with it. And mostly it's probably just through observation, but just like our kids' brains' development will parallel what their abilities are. So in this stage, when they can't move away from you, like they are not trying to leave you, and they don't need to have a sense of strong will that they can survive without you in this first year. Like they very much want to be attached to you. They're building this sense of secure attachment in the first year. But when they turn 1, and roughly, it's just obviously very much dependent, but around 1 is when they start walking. And so when they start walking, they can start to feel a sense of separateness. Like they are separate from you, they're separate from the earth, like whatever they're laying on, they can go away. But like, even with her leaving, the only way that she can leave is if she has a sense that when she comes back, you're still going to be there. And that she knows that when she wants to come back, she can trust that you are going to be there, and she has a solid foundation that she has built with you, that she knows as I'm leaving, and essentially during this time, what the attachment cycle says is like, when she is gone, like you should just support her in her exploration. She's like, you're doing awesome, like go explore. But then when she comes back, you're like, oh great, you came back. And just like, how can I help you? And in this age, it's not as relevant. We'll talk about it later, just like helping them process the emotions, also a part of it. The second thing with 1-year-olds, oh yeah. Yep. Yep. Yep.
It's not, I don't know, I feel like maybe it's a little off because I feel like it was really bad like maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But, is it like, do I put him down? Is that okay? Just let him figure it out that I'm going to come back? Or do I really just need to strap him to me?
It's a good question. So just to repeat it for the people on video. So if the baby is in a stage where they're learning that there is a separateness and that you can leave, should you leave them or should you not? For sure. Yep. Yeah, and I think it's it's going to be baby and situation dependent, to where in the beginning you might want to hold on to him more, but also this is like the way that he learns is going to be through experience. And so typically in the Brain Blossom app, gosh, what was it called? The Wonder Weeks app. They talk about like object permanence boxes, to where it's like using something other than you as the example that things when they disappear aren't gone forever. And again, the object permanence box is great. Peekaboo stuff, like the peekaboo is awesome. But I would totally see, depending on where he's at, and this is the part that's so hard with this, because I think I'm going to go through all the normal and just be like, but this is like in an ideal scenario. There's obviously going to be deviations from that. And there's going to be certain times where, for whatever reason, he feels more securely attached that he might be okay if you do leave. And there might be other times where maybe he's teething and didn't sleep well, and he's got a wet diaper, and he's just like, I've got no bandwidth for you to leave. And you leave, and he's distraught. And so I think I would just, again, use your motherly intuition and just say, man, based off of what I am perceiving and sensing from him, this is what he needs at that time. Because there's not a right or a wrong. With all this stuff, there's not a right or wrong, similar to the hat thing. It's like, it's not like there's one right way to do it. But I would say, again, like even your perception that when you leave, he's, again, kind of distraught. Yeah. I would say, again, maybe just do it less. But I think the Wonder Weeks gives you kind of a window as far as, and again, like this, that is the perfect example of why all this is really, really cool, is because outside of the Wonder Weeks app, most times you're gonna be like, gosh, he's just being so hard right now. But when the Wonder Weeks, it just gives you a perception of, it's like, well, he's starting to see that, like when you leave, that he thinks you're gone forever. And so it just changes how you view the same thing. So again, I don't think there's a right or a wrong. I would say though, my guess is, again, with the goal of in this first year building attachment, I would probably hold on to him more and try to teach him that things can go away with objects as opposed to you. As much as that can, as long as you can stay sane through it all. I can imagine going to the bathroom and not having somebody there would be helpful. The second thing so with 1-year-olds walking, and so again, they're separate from their secure base. The second thing is fascination with objects, where they could just get a thing and just be enamored with that object forever. And I just saw King, he had a ball, and he was throwing me the ball, and then he brought the ball over there, and then he was kicking the ball. It's just like one object can keep them so satisfied because it can do so many things. And that's where the right half of the brain being more active is just like, how many things can you come up with this one object to do? But just really the most important part about that is just giving them the space to do that. Giving them the space with an object. Here we go. Yeah, another ball. So giving them the space with this object to where if he had one ball and an alligator and this push thing, and it was just like so much that he couldn't get the most out of that ball because it would be too much. Or if every time he grabbed the ball and was throwing it to me and then I was trying to talk to him about it, or I was trying to dictate how he did, it's just like, it's going to limit how he can explore that. So they have a fascination with objects, which just kind of let them do that, like just let them explore there. Another thing, so walking, fascination with objects. The third thing is modeling after you. It's during this stage, I would say not usually as much 1, but definitely by 18 months and for sure by 2, they get into a stage where they just want to do what you're doing. Like if you're doing the dishes, they want to be in the sink right next to you, holding your leg. If you are folding clothes, they want to be folding clothes right along with you. And again, that's something you should just feed into that. The hardest part with that is letting them do what they want to do and following you, and still allowing them to provide the space to do it without completely interrupting your day. And so let's talk about, like, if at 2 years old, if Karen wanted to help with cooking, we had a knife set that she could use and a thing and a cutting board. And so like Bridget would give her a slice of pepper to cut so she could be a part of the cooking experience, because that is,
I know, sorry.
Because that is how she's learning, is through that modeling. Speaking is another one, and there's going to be a transition to where, like, speaking at 1 is just making sounds and putting words together. At 18 months, they'll have 50 words. at 2, they can have two-word sentences is pretty much like the general recommendation. And so we'll talk about that. And so during this first year, the behaviors that you'll see is that oftentimes in their first year, they want independence and autonomy. We're just like, I can walk and I'm separate from this, so I want to be able to walk away. I want to be able to go explore the world on my own. Then the fascination, again, with the different toys and objects, just let them explore, give them quiet time to just observe and interact with their world, whatever that looks like, and just observe what they're doing. See what movements they have, see what they're interested in, and try to feed those things. Then with modeling, you should try to, as best as you can, let them help, give them autonomy over their things, and you could even have, like in our house, there are certain drawers and cabinets that we have locked up that Honora does not have access to, and then there's other drawers that she has access to. So like the bottom drawer in the cabinet is all the kids' stuff, and so when she wants to go get a plate or a bowl or something, it's all in the bottom drawer. She knows that she can pull that out, and she can take it, and she can, if she wants a cup, then she can give us a cup. When we're making breakfast and she wants to eat it, she'll give us a plate, she'll give us a bowl, but she has access to that. And then there's certain things that she doesn't have access to that is closed off. But again, it allows her to have that autonomy and allows us to not have to say no and constantly redirect all the time. And then with speaking is an interesting thing, and the recommendation will be the same for all of them with speaking because there's a communication aspect with all the ages. But especially around babies too, but to year 1, singing and melodies and like nursery rhymes, I think are the most important part with speaking, because they force you to slow down your speech enough to where the babies can pick up on the cadence and the words and the sounds and the syllables better than just reading. Like if you just read a book, then oftentimes you can read too fast to where I think you can even hear a lot of like when kids start saying words and they're like, how did you pick that up from what the word actually is?
Or like when kids say the alphabet and they say, what is it, Elemento?
Yes, it's exactly that. But it's just like, we can, and especially with them, I can only imagine, and I guess I would say it's probably similar if we think about, like I know with learning Spanish, like my mother's Puerto Rican, my whole family on her side speaks Spanish. We didn't learn Spanish. But even my biggest problem, even though I took Spanish in school, was how fast they would speak, and I couldn't pick up on the words as quick as they were going. And so I'd imagine with the babies, it's the similar thing. We're just like, we can get into a rhythm and just speak so fast that they have a harder time picking up on all the nuances of what we're saying. And again, if we go too fast, then they can't even really watch how we're moving our mouth to create the sounds. And so singing is really good. Nursery rhymes are great. And then also the other thing that I read that it talked about, which was also very intriguing, was also having a lot of silent time. Because if we want them to be able to create speech, but we're constantly talking, or we're filling our background sounds with podcasts or whatever, YouTube video, all that stuff, there may not be the sound vacuum that needs to be there in order to help them develop their speech as best as they can. Anything with 1-year-olds that you want to talk about, ask?
Where's the best place to find nursery rhymes to sing?
I would probably just Google it, but I think I would find some old book. I mean, Bridget would really be the person for this, but yeah.
There's like a toddler one that I had as a kid.
Because I've tried looking it up on YouTube, and I'm just like, I don't know, these are kind of trash.
I would get a really old book of nursery rhymes that yeah.
Or look at the library for like a CD. I used to have a cassette of nursery rhymes, but I feel like you probably don't have a cassette player.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You have a CD player in your car if you go to the library.
Like, I feel like I brought this up last time about like the seat, like the car seat,
Yep.
the grocery store car, like she doesn't want to sit down.
Yeah.
And I've tried to like slow everything down, like give myself 30 minutes so like she can crawl in her car seat. But even then it's like not working. Like she just refuses to sit down.
Yeah.
So it's like making everything like really challenging, like the grocery store, getting
For
in
sure.
the car, like just no. She wants to. I'm assuming it's because she wants to walk.
Yeah,
She wants
she wants
to stand
independence.
up.
Yeah.
But it's just like I'm trying to give her the space to like do it herself. And she's kind of at a stage where she wants to do everything. She doesn't want to control.
Correct.
She doesn't want to.
Correct. Yeah.
And so I'm like trying to like slow down.
We talking about you. How old is she?
She 14 months.
Gosh, she just turned 1.
When's her
Yeah,
birthday?
January.
Yeah. It's hard because it's that level of independence that she wants. And I would say the thing that, and we have it in here later, just I was hoping you were going to say like 19 months. Like we're almost to 2. For sure.
She's very like, she knows what she wants.
Right.
She persists that, and it's
Yep.
like she will scream and throw tantrums.
Yeah. For sure. Let me go to 2 years old, and I'll explain it there, and then we can fill in whatever gaps there are too, because it seems very much like that. Yeah. Yeah.
You do it. You get dressed.
For sure.
Choose between these.
For sure. Yeah.
But for me, it's been the hardest, like sitting down. Like she
Yeah.
wants in her seat to eat, so she stands up and eats. Like go to the store, like,
Yeah.
in the car.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, I don't know how to get through that.
For sure.
Of like
For sure.
doing things.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We'll see if we can help figure it out. Yeah.
Did Dr. Bridget tell you the question I texted her?
Yes. Yeah, I will. Yes. I think the answer. So the question was. Let's see how I can paraphrase it. Essentially, with younger kids, I would say babies 1. I would say even oftentimes in families, it's up to like even 2, 3, and 4, to where the children have a preference for mom. And just like, how do we navigate that relationship? Yeah.
She won't let anyone. She tells
Yeah.
Daddy to get out of bed. Get up, Dada.
Yeah.
Go out.
Yeah.
She kicks him out of the room.
Yeah. How old is it? 3?
2.5.
2.5. Yeah. So it can last. Like it is very interesting, and I think the best answer that I could come up with that goes back to that attachment cycle, to where, especially for the first 7, 8 months, the babies can't even essentially distinguish themselves from you. Like you guys are one person, and so like you are the most secure home base that they're ever going to have. And so when they go out and explore the world, and they're like, okay, gosh, I'm here, this is awesome, like I'm having fun, I'm learning, I'm doing all this stuff. And then when I come back, like I want to come back to home base, and my home base is you. Because of, again, you carried her for 8, 9 months. You nursed her for, you nursed her for 9 months, 10 months, a year. Like you were her main food source. Like without you, she would not have life. And so,
I'm like, she loves you because she knows you're always here. She's familiar with you. But sometimes she just.
It's just different.
Like,
Yeah.
She like pushes me away, and I can't even give her affection. I'm like, you can't take it personally like that.
Yeah.
She's not really trying to not love you. She
Correct.
doesn't even know how to show love to people. It looks like she loves me more just because I have her food or dinner milk.
Correct.
You know?
Correct.
And I was telling you too, I'm like, right now, as she is getting like that independence that you guys talk about a lot, she's learning that it's okay if you like feed her or take her on a walk, and like she can be farther from me for a long amount of time. Like, but you need to like foster that. Like the other day, you took her to Home Depot. And I took a nap. It was cool. Like we should try to do stuff like that often, not because I need a babysitter, but because now it's starting to be time that she's building a relationship with
That
you.
was that was going to be my recommendation too. Is just like if he takes her to a place to where you're not there, and then he is essentially the de facto home base now. So like she can go explore and go do things like I tell everybody my favorite thing with babies this age, like once they start walking, is the zoo. They're just like, because we lived out here, we would drive 45 minutes to go to the zoo. Oftentimes they fall asleep. I get to do whatever I want in the car while they're sleeping. Then we go to the zoo, explore the zoo for 3 or 4 hours, and then we would come back and they'd sleep on the way home. And the biggest thing is that the house wouldn't be destroyed when we got back because we were out at the zoo. And so we would go to the zoo and then just spend time there. And then with that time, again, like that is very much bonding time. But it's for the same, if we think about the timelines, oftentimes we just skip to like, man, when the baby was born. But for 9 months, she was inside of your womb and she didn't reciprocate any love to you at all. Like you put 9 months of hard labor to get to where you were at. And so now, again, it's going to take time. It's going to take time once she can be separate from you to where she's not having to nurse every 3 or 4 hours. Like it'll still take time for him and her to build that relationship. But any relationship, it takes time to build. And if they can have that space where you're not there, and then he can form his attachment with her outside of a space where you're present. And that's just where somebody was asking us, I don't remember who it was. It might have been you guys. It was, because it was about like night weaning.
Yeah, he's like, this morning, like, see, this is why I'm not doing it yet.
Yeah.
She just has to start to learn that it's
Correct.
okay that I'm not there. And
Correct.
You can sleep her back to sleep.
Correct.
It is a challenge, but those are the habits we're
Correct.
breaking.
Correct.
As a family, like
Right.
I can't do anything about it. It's like we're not the ones being rejected, so easy for you to say, you know.
But
It's just hard to know you want it all the time.
Right,
Like,
right.
I'm on demand constantly. Like,
Yeah.
It's kind of hard for me to start to separate from her too, but I'm asking you to step in, and if it's hard, and
Yeah.
as she's getting more used to you, we're just transitioning.
Right.
It's kind of that time.
And I think to like just further that point, where it's just like when she would cry, you would have an innate understanding of what she needs. And the majority of the time when they're crying at this age, it's for milk. And so she would cry and you would provide that need. And so when she needs something, who is she going to turn to? The person who has provided. And so if he can step in, and if she's crying and say, are you hungry or are you thirsty? And that's where I think the nighttime is perfect for that. It's just like, you're gonna have just a couple of needs if you're sleeping. Like it's usually pretty simple. It's just like, if you're hungry, here, take whatever food source we have for you. If you're thirsty, here, take this water. And then she can start to recognize that, man, even though like mom typically was for my first year, my mom was providing for most of my needs. But now, wherever we're at, dad is now, dad's got plenty of good stuff too, but she has to, it's a very much a learned thing, but it's also just very much experiential. So where it's like, just because he is present, again, for the first year, for 9 or 10 months, the best that he could do is change her diaper. Like, he just doesn't have the milk that he needs to have in order to feed her. And so, and I think it's very much like, I don't think that we should change that. And like, I don't think that you have to pump and let dad give bottle. Like, I don't think if you want to do that, obviously go for that. But I just don't think it needs to be that. I don't think we need to change how things are built to change that. I think we should recognize it for how it was designed. And I think if we want to change it after, then I think that's how we have to do it. Like, he has to provide 4 needs for her. And when she knows that when she needs something, she can go. Like, it's crazy how smart they are. And you're going to see it a little bit more. Like, Anora's 19 months. But she knows that I am very much against her getting pouches first thing in the morning. So she knows she has her cabinet with her pouches. She opens up the cabinet, she grabs a pouch, and then she brings it to me. And I'm like, no, you're not going to have a pouch before we have breakfast. And she's like, well, if you're not going to give it to me, I want a pouch. So I'm going to go and, well, mom is usually sleeping. She does try to go to mom sometimes, but she goes to Karen because Karen just gives it to her. So she brings the pouch to Karen, and then Karen feels like the best person of all time. She's like, you want this? I'll totally give it to you. And so she's like, all right, here's the pouch. And so now Anora knows that if she wants a pouch in the morning or a bar, both of which are off limits if she could bring them to me, she's like, well, I'm going to bring it to the person who's going to give it to me. And so what I think Evelyn is doing without having the words to say it is like, for so long, I had needs. And even if Alex had her and she needed to nurse, he can't do anything but bring her to you.
Especially now when he knows like we're kind of moving in the direction of me probably not nursing her too much longer. He's just like, okay, well then what would I do? What would I do right now? Like now I'm stuck. Which is just like, milk, constantly, So he just gets.
But I think it is a thing that is going to change with time though. Because when she realizes that she's not going to get milk, like the same thing is going to happen when you stop nursing, right? Like she's going to go to you and you're like, there's no more milk. And then she's going to say like, wow, I'm hungry. I need to get food somewhere else. And so when Alex can provide that, then she can say, well, if I have this need, I don't need to just go to mom. I can go to dad just as well, and he can provide that for me. Correct. Correct.
Okay, so never let dad go in the middle of the night until the view was born. Really? And then I just stopped going in. And I still have to put her to bed. It's still mine. But in the middle of the night, like most of the time I can get away with not going in there.
Yeah,
and sometimes I just won't.
Because like last night I put her down. I usually nurse her to sleep. Because we have it. I also love to cook very soon. And then I got up to go to the bathroom, and she wanted milk because I like snuck away, and she knew. When she sees me walk away, like she's just crying. He's trying to comfort her, and she's just starting so torn up. He's like, "How are you night weed?" I'm like, "Well, I just wouldn't even be here. I think it's me leaving that's the worst. We just eliminated the whole thing altogether."
We lived off bananas for a really long time.
Yeah.
You love him.
Yeah. But yeah, like they say, like necessity is the mother of invention, right? It's like if I have the need and mom is not providing it any longer, we need to come up with a different answer. And so I think that is ultimately going to be the
I know y'all
answer.
are so tired of me asking you about night weaning.
Oh,
It's just been like the last year, I feel like. Since she was like 6
it's
months
good.
old. I'm like, really? We're going to do that soon? You're going to bring it up a month
yeah.
later? Okay.
But I really feel like, I mean, I never had the thought until just talking about it now, but I feel like that is a huge turning point, that if dad can do night weaning and be a huge part of that, where the kids can now see dad in the same light that they saw mom in for the first year.
Make sure you say that in the microphone.
Yeah. Just get the timestamp. Just go to 35 minutes.
Okay, maybe that'll motivate her. Because I was thinking that too. Like she will start to realize like she can provide for me.
Correct.
Like a source of relying on
Right.
his needs.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's good.
I mean, yeah. So this morning they went outside and played.
So for 2-year-olds, social life is increasing. And so, like I said from before, where 1-year-olds typically have mama, dada. At 18 months, they have around 50 words. At 2 years old, they start saying 2-word sentences. And so language goes from more just making sounds to communicating. Like I'm trying to actually communicate a thought to you, but they're pretty terrible at it because they only can say 2 words at a time. Another thing that happens is they go from third person to first person, which means they're furthering into their body. So instead of saying, like, when Honora sees herself in the mirror, she says, Honora. Karen used to, at 3, Karen would say, me going to, and she's like actually inhabiting her body. And that furthers that like separateness to where she can say, like, I am separate from these other things. Separation and anxiety is another thing that happens. And then questioning. Why are you doing this? What are you doing? And so what you can do in that timeline, so the social life part is just help them communicate more. Help them explain and help them process their feelings. Using play and imagination are good. I think this could be something that might be helpful. Is like, again, she's just so young for it, but I think it's worth a shot. Is using play and imagination is where like you can tell a story and just, you'll be able to figure it out. But essentially it's like, it's similar to like when the toys are all on the floor and then we make up the game of who can pick up the toys the fastest. Or if you have a goal of getting them dressed, it's like, man, it's going to be, and I don't know, say like a cold monster is coming and you need to get dressed super fast. How fast can you get dressed? What do you want to wear? Or if you're driving, like, man, and just make up this crazy elaborate thing. And yeah, for sure. Yeah. And just make up an imaginative story and almost, again, like fairy tales, and like create this story to just give a reason why without necessarily having to give her a reason why. Again, because she's so young for it. But I think using that imaginative part of her brain, and I would even see if you're seeing this in other areas too, like if she is more like mature, further along in her development to where like she's playing with toys differently, and she's using more, and again, it's going to be hard because she's not going to be able to communicate it as much. But even like she's sitting in this basket, it's like she's not taking the basket and putting stuff in it. And so she's using the basket differently than what it's for. But so I think you can use that imaginative, more like storytelling to reach a part of her brain to help her decide what it is that she wants to do. Correct. Yeah. Correct.
Give her what she wants.
Right. Right.
It's just like I'm always not doing
Yeah.
it way.
Yeah. And I think even too, sometimes, and it's hard, I would say from our perspective, like when we are at our best, we try to use a somewhat of a modified form of like gentle parenting, where it's just like, I want to help you kind of guide and direct you on where you want to go. But I think at the same time, especially when they're this young, they often need structure to allow that gentleness to work. And so part of that structure can be, I see you on a stand, we're getting in the car and we're going to go drive. And you don't have to elaborate all this, but just like, and we're going to drive to the store. Once we get to the store, maybe instead of putting you in the car, maybe we can walk around in the store. But that is way safer than you standing in the car. So we're going to buckle you in the car now. So then when we go to the store, we can go for a walk. Or if you spend 5 minutes walking beforehand, we're going to walk around now. Then we're going to buckle you in when we get into the car. And as soon as we get there, then we can take you out and you can walk there. And you don't have to sit while we're there. But there's no choice. Like, you have to sit while we're in the car.
I feel like there's a blessing and a curse coming. I'm like, I wish
Yeah.
you could just talk to her and explain things. Like, I'm just like explaining
Yes, a lot of
more
things.
questions.
Yeah,
Like, I don't
yeah.
know, maybe I kind of like
Does she have any specialty snacks?
Well, we're like on this like really strict like gut healing
Yeah.
diet, so like snacks like aren't really a thing.
Yeah.
And so I used to motivate her with snacks, and now I can't because it's like bone broth and meat stuff and like meat. So it's not like
Yeah.
hey, here's this bar. So that makes my life even hard.
For sure.
I know that you said that she's like free and dairy, but can you have you ever done sun butter?
Yeah.
Because I make granola bars with like oats, flax meal, maple syrup, and I use peanut butter, but you can use sun butter instead, and like dried strawberries. And then I just put dried strawberries in it. And maybe you could make like a granola bar.
Yeah, I saw like Wild Nutritionist. She just posted like a bar. Like she literally makes ground beef, pours tallow over it, and then adds like freeze-dried strawberries on top and like freezes them and wraps them in parchment paper. I might try that. But
Yeah.
sounds gross.
Snacks are great.
She'll like it.
Then the separation anxiety goes back to that attachment where it's just, again, there's a constant cycle of I'm secure with my home base, so I'm going to leave, and then I leave, and now I need to come back to home base. And when they're coming back, they essentially just need you to protect them and comfort them and let them know that they're going to be okay. And then questions, this is a part with questions that is interesting. So answering them when they're direct, just like this is, like if they say like, what color is this? Like you're going to want to answer that. But if they ask you something else, oftentimes a great answer is, I wonder why. Or what do you think it could be? Because we don't want them to just ask and just like get the answer. And I have this in another age, but I'll say it now. We're just like, I saw this the most. We were reading something at some point, probably with Vincent, and essentially it was like, you shouldn't draw a thing or build a thing and then have them draw or build that thing, because then they're going to compare what they drew or built to yours. And so they're going to like view that as the standard and be like, I can't do that, or mine doesn't look like that. And it's like, mine's not as good as yours. And so even answering that question can often be that. It's like if I just give you the answer, and again, some things do just require an answer. So you don't have to just constantly be like, I wonder what you think. But using that as a tool to help them at this age explore their development is huge, because they are entering into a stage where they can start thinking more. And so that questioning can help foster that development. Then for 3-year-olds, they have even better communication. And the thing that I read said that movement leads to communication. Communication leads to thinking. And I was like, that is fascinating. And then at 3 years old, it talks about how thinking is precipitated by eye. So again, like them coming into their own body gives them a space to where they can start engaging and interacting with the world. At 3 years old, it talked about engaging with others versus parallel play. So in 1 and 2, like them playing with other kids is like them playing, and they're doing the same thing as this person next to them, but they don't have to communicate with them. They don't have to talk to them. They're just like, I'm doing this and you're doing this, but we are playing together. At 3, it changes and transforms to let's do a thing together. And so trying to, again, at 2 and at 3, just give them the space to be around other kids so they can figure out that social interaction. And so much of play, there's this book called, I think it's just called Play. It's like, what's the significance of play? And they said if play was purposeless, then animals wouldn't do it. Like animals don't do anything that's purposeless. And then they talked about how so many different animals play, and they're like, play is very much a social interaction game where you can help figure out, how am I supposed to interact with others, but you could do it in a way that's non-threatening. And so that's what play is. And so just allowing kids to play together is huge. And then at 3 years old, they want more challenging physical play. So they want to climb on higher things. They want to they want to do scooters and all that sort of thing. And so what you can do during this time, again, for the thinking part, you can answer their questions, but don't answer too much. Help them create wonder in their mind. Help them come up with the answers on their own. Then play, you want them around other kids. Storytelling, I think, is a huge part, because there's so much that you can do through storytelling. Again, I think this is another tool that you can use with storytelling. We're just like, this is why we do this. So like storytelling, and even using storytelling. Bridget asked me this one time, and I was like, gosh, I do not do that at all. But she's like, at the end of your day, do you like go back through your day and like think about what happened and think about what you could do differently and how different things could go? And I was like, no, I've literally never done that one time. She's like, I think you should. I think you should reflect on your day a little bit more than you do. It's an interesting thing to think about. But again, typically the thing that I do at least, is I just fill my life with so much stuff that I don't even have capacity to think about other things that have happened already. But using that for your kids, especially, again, this is a little bit older. Hazel's right around there. But when we talk about, I was listening to this video today talking about emotions and how we process and unpack emotions. And one of the things it talked about is that for most people, their family was okay with 5 to 7 emotions. Like if you could have 5 to 7 emotions. There were certain emotions that were you couldn't do that. Thank you so much. So he talked about in some families, anger was completely appropriate. Like it's okay that you're angry, but you couldn't be sad. And in other families, like laughter was great, but you couldn't feel jealousy or something like that. And so what they said is that, and I just listened to the first part of this, but it was such a fascinating concept. And so it said, like, if you keep that, if you only have 5 to 7 emotions, what you do is that you take whatever emotions you are feeling and you transform them into the 5 to 7 that are acceptable. And so what storytelling can do for 3-year-olds is it can help them unpack what it is that they're feeling outside of that emotion. So like with Hazel, if something were to happen today and you didn't have the space or capacity to talk about it because you're like, you're too angry, you're too sad, we just have to pull away. Then you could say tonight, man, Hazel, when we were at the cottage and X, Y, or Z happened, it looked like you were feeling this way. And you can help her start processing that emotion.
Where she'll be like, I'm feeling mad, I'm angry, and I'm like, you can be angry, but you can't be mean. And we're like in that big phase of like definitely speaking about our emotions because I know our household has a hard time. And it's just trying to let her feel the feelings and get through the angry part of it. And that's where I'm trying to like have patience.
For sure.
Like, know that I can be calm when she's like angry because I'm really obviously growing myself a lot. But is there any there's certain things, and we're getting through it, but like breakfast time, I don't let her eat anything until she has eggs. And so like the beginning is a fight, and then we carry eggs with us if we don't eat them before we leave the house. And like I know it's important because she doesn't eat enough, and you can see the second like sugar hits her body, she's like constant. So I'm like, is there any more ways to like let her feel the emotions? Like if she's bothering the dog or like doing something she shouldn't do, like removing her, but I don't want to like put her in a room, but there's times where I don't have the capacity to do this, that, and like handle the emotion that's I would say the biggest thing that we have tried to do is just what you said. Like, I see that you're feeling this. What you are doing is not an appropriate way to respond to that emotion. Here are other options. So if you are feeling this, and I would say, I'm trying to think back, I would say most of the time, it seems like, and maybe it's just how our brains work, it seems like during a season, there's a similar emotion that pops up over and over and over again. Almost until we like learn how to process it and deal with it, and then we can almost like graduate to another emotion. And so I would say if you just pick one emotion, and just whatever it is, and then just help her process it, the hardest part with it is I think we don't go back to circle when we're outside of that emotion. And so if you can go back and say, before, again, it looked like you, and I'm very, just, right. Normally she doesn't nip, but the other day she this is what we've been telling you is going to happen.
But I think
she's setting a boundary with you.
Right. I think if you help her process the emotion outside of her feeling the emotion, it can help her process it even better.
Just like giving her tools.
I would give her tools, but even just sometimes there was this course that was talking about how you have to, it was talking about just different things, different behaviors that we want to train in our kids. It's like listening the first time. And so if we want them to listen the first time, we can't just say, hey, I need you to listen the first time. You need to train that. So like outside of them needing to listen the first time, you should, and this should be a Kevin thing. Like, because, and this is overarching the way that it was like the dad is, I would say dads typically tend to be the best coaches to where it's just like they're used to that. Well, for sure. But I think what can happen outside of the storm, it doesn't feel as intense. Like if we're in, and it's the analogy I think is so good, and it comes from Family Teams and Jeremy Pryor, but he talks about how like I played baseball when I was growing up, and you wouldn't just go like with a team, you wouldn't just go from game to game to game. You were just like, there has to be practice time. So and usually you practice 2 or 3 times as much as you actually play, because the point of playing the game is to show off what you're doing in practice. But in life with our kids, it's just game after game after game after game, and there's never any practice time for them to like get better. And so what they say, and what we have found to be successful as well, is like dad should be the head trainer, where there's time set apart, whether it's even just 5 minutes a day, a couple times a week, where we're just gonna have a training session, and then we could say, hey Hazel, we're gonna pretend like you wanted to play with this thing and I'm gonna take it and it's gonna make you really angry. How can you handle that? So when it actually happens and she is actually angry, she has practiced multiple times of, oh, I'm feeling this way, I shouldn't respond by hitting, scratching, yelling, like all that stuff. I have my tools that I can do, and the only way that I can be successful in using those tools is if we've practiced them beforehand.
So you're like practicing the actual scenarios, like
I would, yes. Because that is
It's a setup of play.
correct. And then it goes back to like the play scenario and the imagination and all that stuff, because you unlock a different part of their brain. And I think for us as parents too, like you said, I totally resonate with everything you're saying. Just like when X, Y, or Z is happening, like not trying to let that emotion get onto you essentially. But if we're training it, it is hard. It is hard, And especially just as things of life increase, then your capacity to handle that drops down significantly. But it seems it's so different for us too, like entering into this as a training scenario. And they say it, like the people who taught us this, they're like, in practice, if you do something wrong, like typically your coach doesn't just scream at you. It's usually like, hey, I saw you did this. You should try to do this instead.
And I can see her wheels, like she'll look at me when I say no about something, and I can see her wheels turning, and then eventually she just says it as loud as she can at the top of her lungs. And usually we'll put her boots on and go outside and let her play in the dirt. And I'm like, you can't scream in this home.
Right.
We don't. So then someone else is screaming in the house. She goes, you need to go outside.
Yeah.
Which, she's learning.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Like, totally getting
For sure.
in her head.
Yep,
But,
absolutely.
like, what would, this sounds terrible, but like, what would an easy solution be to teach her how to deal with that anger when she wants something? Is it like, I need to go outside? Because like sometimes I'm like, you just need to tell me that you have a lot of energy and you need to go outside. If you're feeling like upset about something that you're not getting, we can just go outside.
For sure.
And like play in the dirt if that makes you feel better.
Yeah, I think so. Are you asking what's
an inside thing she can do when she's really mad?
Just to process. I would say you should read what she wants to do and give her opportunities there. So for example, when Karen, and it's hard to because there's many layers. I'd say for Hazel's not in Karen's situation. Like Karen would have to scream if she didn't want Vincent to do something, because it's the only way that she found that he would stop and other people would help intervene to where she could actually get the help that she needed. But I would say let's use Vincent because it's a more appropriate example. Like sometimes when he is upset, he wants to hit things. Like he wants to punch the wall. He wants to break stuff. Like it's a very common thing. It's just like, well, if you want to do that, he's looking for physical activity. So what things can you do? You can go, you can hit you can hit a pillow, you can go outside, we have a swing, you can go outside and go on the swing. If they want physical stuff, then give them physical things that they can do. And again, you can come up with a million different things, that you can do to help process that. If it's auditory, and I feel like she's probably transitioning to more of an auditory thing, to where screaming and yelling is more of what she wants. It's like, well, if you want to go yell, go outside and yell. Or if you want to stay inside, you can take this pillow and you can scream inside the pillow and you can get it out that way. So just trying to see. Me either. Yeah. But I think, and the thing that I was listening to said this very much, where it's like, and it makes sense from the babies. Like at 2, when they have words but they can't communicate well, a primary emotion they feel is frustration and anger. And so we see that come out in their behavior. And I would say largely that emotion that they have is because they can't communicate well enough. And so for us with emotions, if we don't have the words to explain what we want to explain, then we go to those primary 5 to 7 emotions that we have. And it's like, well, I'm feeling this thing. I don't even know what I'm feeling or how to process it, but I do know this emotion. And so I'm going to go to my default, whatever it is. Yeah, it's exactly what that is. Yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, when I heard that, it was so fascinating because again, like that is the perfect example of just like how different your families were. That was, it's just so cool. Yeah.
I feel like I was never allowed to be mad, but I could be sad. So like that's probably why.
Yes. Yep.
Don't get mad.
Level of anger like is okay and not okay.
Yeah.
Like, she'll pick her lips all the time. And like now she's like picking in her nose. So it's don't pick your nose. She goes like around her face.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. I'm gonna skip 4, and I'll just talk about that because I think it's a good thing where I feel like that is the perfect example of there's certain behaviors, all behaviors, are just a reflection of what she needs, and so with picking this and the hair and all, like she is asking for sensory input. Yeah. And so when we say it would be, I don't know, it's almost like if you just ran a marathon and I had a bottle of water here, you're like, I'm really thirsty. Can I have that? And I said, no, you can't have this. It's like, and then you went up to 5 people and were like, nope, you can't have this, and you can't. You're just like, and like the level of what you would feel, and you have a fully developed brain to where you can process that. They have nowhere near that, and so it's just like that immediate response and that reflexive behavior is like, I'm not getting what I want. And so when we talk about like the developing brain, like movement and touch is the second level from the bottom. The first is primitive reflex. And so when you don't get what you want, and then the brain just like, well, I'm trying to get a sensory input and I can't get this, so I'm going to go to the most primitive thing that I could do, and I'm going to yell, scratch, bite, pull, kick, do all those things because I am so much in a fight or flight feeling. The only way that I think I could process it is by pulling my own hair out. Like that is, intense. But I wouldn't say there's probably an appropriate level, but I do think the behaviors that we see very much tell us what's going on.
That's good. Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
She has a sensory plan.
Yeah.
Dive into that and feel like more because she's also having a meltdown because I wouldn't let her watch TV when she woke up from her nap.
Yeah.
And as soon as she saw her sensory beat,
Yeah.
it was totally
Yep.
totally fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And just another pro tip with that, we heard this and we learned it in our birthing class before we even had kids. But in the birthing class, they said the brain doesn't understand no. So when you say like, don't pick your nose, like the brain doesn't process that. All it hears is pick your nose. And so if you can say, again, if you see her doing something, you don't, it's like, do you want to go play with your sensory bin? And again, you can use it like, or would you like to do X, Y, or Z? That's another positive alternative. Then it would be a positive redirect where she is not hearing the word no. Because even again, at her age, there's like a combative thing. It's like, well, I want to. Like, I'm independent enough and I'm ready to go to war over this. But it would be sometimes easier to redirect with a question. Like, which one would you like to do? And just give alternatives. But just seeing, and this is, again, another fascinating thing. It's like, I would also see when she is picking and pulling and stuff. Because oftentimes, that's a time where she's more stressed. And so if you can figure out the circumstances surrounding that stressor, ultimately, if you can redirect from that stressor, that would then circumvent the entire rest of the problem.
It's like even every time I read her book, when she takes her nap, she'll just sit there and like, it's not as bad, she'll just like pick her up and just fall asleep. Like,
Yeah. Just because she's seeking that sensory input. Yeah. And the hands and the mouth are the most sensitive parts of the body. And so when the brain is looking for that input, it typically will go there. Like babies suck their thumbs. You'll like play with it. Like most people, and even the feet are a little bit more sensitive, but nobody like plays with their knees or like their elbow. Like it just doesn't have the sensory impact as your lips and your hands do. And so I think that's why. But I think, and again, to me, it just probably tells me that her brain is probably a little bit more in that stress category. And so what she's doing while she's going to sleep is getting her brain out of that stress, fight or flight into the parasympathetic, like rest and relax mode through that touch. And even like with a lot of other kids, like they'll have like their blankie or whatever their stuffy is, because that brings them a level of sense and security where they get out of that fight or flight mechanism and they get into that relaxation, parasympathetic rest and relax mode. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah, so I think I would use imagination and storytelling, I think might be your hack to get through.
I'm really bad at that. Or just like you were saying, every behavior means something. So if she's constantly like frustrated, and then she just wants to cling to me more, and then I'm in a way kind of like
pushing her away.
No, because like I just cannot stand. Like I know this is bad to say, but like the whining.
Oh, I get it.
Drives me nuts.
Oh yes.
It's like no.
Yep.
I know you're one. Like
yes.
get together.
Right. Yes.
Maybe she just needs more like autonomy. But like her room is like Montessori. She only has like one open shelf. Like she has her clothes. So I'm like, what else? Like we're outside. What more like autonomy things that I can give her so she is like being in charge in a way.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like I'm constantly being like, no, and like I have to do this, even though like I don't want to.
Something that's interesting that just hit me as you were talking, we used to talk about playing a game or just like getting in the car and like what that means of like getting in the car when you don't have to go anywhere. And so like when you get in the car, like this is what we do. And almost creating like this order of things that happen, where just like when you go into the car, this is what happens first, this is what happens next, and then this is what happens. And so like practicing that, like again, I don't know if you heard like the practicing part with like other things and other behaviors, but one of the things that the group where they would talk about is like how frustrating transitions can be with the car, with their family. And so like the family would just literally practice, and these kids were probably a little bit older, I mean definitely older, but they would practice like how fast can we all get in the car and get buckled? And it was a game. And when you can do it outside of the stress, and I know you said you're giving yourself plenty of time, so it's probably not too stressful, but
She probably says my anxiety, and I'm also
right.
like, I give myself time, and then I'm like, okay, like in about 10 minutes we're gonna go get in the car, and then we're gonna buckle up, and we're gonna go to the store, and you're gonna help me pick out fruit and veggies. Like I feel like I'm explaining, and she's still and she'll like look at me, and she's like, and like turn around and start playing all the lights on.
For sure. Something else I just thought too that might be helpful is if you can get. Does she play with dolls and stuff? She's kind of early, but I feel like you're on the cusp of being there, where I would have a doll that you buckle into their seat. So she can see it happen, and she could even probably participate in it.
Because I did bring toys. I have this puzzle that is on the thing, so she can actually put the toys in there while we're driving, and that helped a little bit.
For sure, but that'll help keep her occupied once you're there. But if the problem is getting her in the seat, I would see like how can you again? Games is good. She's just so young for it that it's I think that's the hardest part. But games are good. But her seeing other people get buckled, and so like. If you're not driving, like if you sit in the back with her and like you buckle in and then she buckles in, it's like this is just kind of what we do.
Her teddy bear or something in.
Correct. Yes. And that could even be what you do with play. It's just like if you wanted to do that too. Do you have a car seat that stays in the car or it comes out? Yeah. Do you have a second car seat? Just because I would be weary of playing in the car. Because then it can create the habit of, we're just playing. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. I would also, I don't know why this just hit me. I wonder if for some reason she just is uncomfortable sitting. And it's almost like that reflexive, I want you to sit, but just like, no, I definitely don't want to sit. I would just pay attention to that too, outside of the car seat and outside of the stroller to see if she has an aversion to sitting anywhere else. It's a reach, but
It's the buckle.
feeling constrained. But I would try to see how you can do it with play, and see in a play scenario how can you recreate that. because even like we have like a carrier over there. Like I would wonder if she would respond, like, and it has a buckle on it. I would wonder how she would respond to that carrier.
Like putting something in that carrier, or
Putting that carrier on her, to where like she's like buckled in the carrier, and see if that's. But I think you might have to create play scenarios around the trouble area to help her kind of work through the emotion that she has with it. But I do think maybe playing with, I think the teddy bear is great. And just like maybe trying to put the teddy bear in the seat too. Again, I would just probably prefer if it were a car seat that weren't in the car. Just because I don't want her to get in and just like, well, then she gets in the car and she's like, well, the teddy bear needs to go in the car seat. So I don't need, like, if the teddy bear is there. But I think the stroller is probably a decent one too. And if you can't, I would probably try to go to a thrift store or Facebook Marketplace and just get a push stroller that she can have her own, that you could then put the bear in and train that way. And then she can even help train the bear. Just be like, oh, we're going for a walk. And you could even say, like, we're going for a walk. And it could even just be a walk around the house. And she puts the bear in the stroller and she gets to push the stroller with the bear. And so she has that autonomy. But it's not the same like high leverage situation of her like going in the stroller or her going in the car seat. But yeah, I think it's so hard because she's so young. And so like her brain is not in a space where she's fully able to,
And I was doing like when we sit in the car, I'll give you this toy, but then I'm like driving. And I don't think she like fully gets it. I mean, she does. She's
for
like,
sure.
okay, I want to do that.
Right.
But I just don't want to.
It's a hard habit to, Yeah. I would, and again, she's young, but I think in probably, and she might be, because you said she's 14 months, so probably in maybe 4, hopefully not 4 months, maybe 2 months for her, if she's already kind of showing some of these things, maybe in 2 to 4 months, I think that imaginative playing with the doll type thing can be very impactful.
More like independent play because she's still like constantly like, here, play with me, you know?
Giving
me all the toys and stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe that would help too.
And I also, how often do you guys drive where she's not alone in the back?
In the back seat, not much.
Because I also wonder too if that, in your stroller, does she face forward or face you?
Not me, she faces away.
I think that may be a part of it too, where she just similar, like she may just think like that you're gone. And not like she knows that you're there, but she might want like, again, like that wanting, that may be what she's like, well, when I sit here, you disappear. When I sit in the stroller, you're gone. She might be, that would be more appropriate for her age, as opposed to her like bucking the system and saying like, I don't want to sit down, I want to stand. Like that's a little bit older. But it would make more sense to me that if every time she goes in the car seat, you disappear, that she may just, especially with that last part, so like she still wants you very much, even like how she was like sitting on your lap. She just might want more of you. And when you disappear, when she goes in the car seat. I think you were here, just like that, breaking that only comes from her being super secure that you're going to be there. And so like to foster independence, you have to foster security. If she doesn't have that secure attachment base, then she's not going to have the freedom to have that independence later.
And that's what I told my husband, like, I thought I like had the secure attachment, but obviously if she's being like super like clingy, she's needing something.
Correct.
But my husband's like, no, I think you made too much of a secure attachment where she's like,
No, I would, again, and their behavior tells you. That's where I think oftentimes, especially for us, like me and Bridget, because we are so educatedly trained on like all the stuff. I think the hardest part, it's not super hard for Bridget because she's super intuitive. The hardest part for me is just like trusting that intuition, just trusting this, like what you were seeing, and like what you were seeing is not an accident. So like she's, maybe, but I think probably more so because of my training and just all the stuff that I'm taught and that I've read and that I think I know. That I think it can become harder to just like trust what you're seeing. And even again, let's say a whole thing with like doctors and stuff and just like, well, they're trained in like what they know And then like and society tends to think, well, they know better than you do as the parent, which is like, you don't innately trust your intuition. But I think if your intuition is telling you, and if you're seeing through her behaviors that she's asking for attachment, she might be in a stage where she just needs more attachment, but she's getting ready for a stage of independence. But again, the more you push away the attachment, the further you push away that independence, because for them, they can't be independent unless they know that when they return back, that they're going to have a secure home to attach to.
So delay the weaning then, because I've also been trying to
Like night weaning?
Yeah.
Has the car seat and the stroller always been a thing?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
It's just worse, like in the past month.
When did you start night weaning?
Oh, we haven't fully.
Oh.
I've just been trying. Like she was sleeping through the night.
Yeah.
Like maybe up once, and she's been waking up like 3 or 4 times, and he was only going in there and just like rubbing her and
Yeah.
sleep, and now she was screaming
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
And so now I'm like feeding her again, but I'm like, but she was sleeping through the night, and I wasn't feeding her at all.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't want to like get back into that habit.
Yeah.
So many questions.
Lots of nuance. Yeah, I don't know if I would say that I would stop. Again, if it's your desire to do the night weaning, then I feel like it's still probably a decent time to do it. But I think she's just going to, that secure attachment doesn't have to just be you. Like it can and eventually should be just as much your husband as well. And so if he can start fostering that now too, it sounds like she needs a secure attachment somewhere. And so whether that's coming from you or coming from him, the thing that I wouldn't do, and you guys aren't doing it, is just like let her cry it out because she needs to like figure it out on her own. Like that's the independent part that I wouldn't do. But if he's going in, like again, she may not have the same feelings for him as she has for you right now, but she can start building that with time if he meets the needs that she has. Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Because like I'm constantly there.
Right.
Attending to her needs, and I thought I was doing it too much, which
Yeah.
is not.
Yeah, I don't think you could do it too much, but if you need the space, like if you feel like when Bridget gets to the point where she's just like, I can't handle this anymore, like that is when it's just like, okay, then I'll step in and take over. So like if you feel like you need that space, then he can do it. If you're like, I mean, I don't mind doing it, I was just doing it because I thought we were doing X, Y, or Z, and you feel like in your heart that it's probably a good thing that she could need you again, then there's no right or wrong. I think the right or the wrong is just providing for her needs. And if she's asking for attachment, that is a time where you as a family should not push her away. Again, who provides the attachment, I think is more or less irrelevant. But I think she needs somebody to attach to so she can then foster the independence. Because again, as she's walking, and I haven't been observing too much, like I even wonder, like, how far away does she walk from you? Yeah, because she's asking, and I had a feeling, but she's asking for that connection. But there is separation. Yeah. 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 But like this, like she's walking away, so she's getting there. But again, I would feed the attachment, because essentially it's almost like kind of a decent analogy. It's almost like a rope, and like as you feed the attachment, the rope gets longer to when she wants to walk away, she can walk away further. And so your attachment is just like, I'm going to keep feeding this rope because I'm like, it's another step now. So now we're like 3 or 4 steps away. And if she can get over this railing, I bet she'll take even another step. And so you're fostering through the connection, you're fostering that independence. Right. But I think what she might be asking for with the car seat and the stroller, and can your stroller turn around or no? Like, yeah. What she might be asking for, she might want that connection and the reassurance, this pure curiosity.
It makes me think about the carrier. Like she even hates the carrier, and that's like literally close to me, like skin to skin, and she was like, no. So I just thought about that.
It's interesting.
Yeah, because yesterday, like I got her out of the car seat and I clicked the carrier, and she was immediately like, doing this, and I was like.
But it was immediately after the car seat?
Yeah.
But even outside, it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, and I clip it in, she's like, no. So I just thought about the carrier, which is weird because like she used to love it, and it's like literally on me.
Evelyn's kind of the same way though. I think they're just at a stage, and correct me if I'm wrong, where they're just learning so much through movement, and they just love moving so much. Like when I start to buckle her in, like even sometimes when I first sit in her car seat, she's cool. When she realizes she's gonna stay in it and I'm strapping her to it, that's when she's like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
And same thing with the carrier. She's like, like this one's a bust out.
Yeah.
She's like, I have other things on my mind than whatever you're strapping me to.
I don't know if this really matters, but when you drive, do you drive far? No.
I don't like to leave the videos.
Yeah. Yeah, my guess would be probably that too, that she just wants more movement. And when she gets strapped into things, then obviously she can't.
I try my best not. Alex like, oh, can you stop by the post office? I'm like, stop by places.
Yeah, just the in and the out. Yeah.
Or something like, or we can walk over to the park or walk around somewhere else, but I can't just stop in and then put her back in the car.
Right.
She's like, what are we doing back here again?
It's like, leave it at the stops.
Yeah, anywhere I go, we're there for a hot
minute.
minute.
Yeah.
Or she needs a nap on me, and then we reset, and then we can get back in the car. Like, that, I mean, that doesn't help always, but that's just we're trying to mitigate.
Yeah.
Like get movement in between. Like that's why a huge reason besides enjoying your chiropractic care that I knew that was a better fit for us because we can always walk right over the cottage. I just walk over to Whole Foods if I have to go. Instead of like me having to run errands. Like all of our errands are in the same parking lot, so even our base is right here. It's like walking over there.
Right. Yeah. But I still think that is probably very true and probably the majority of what's happening. But the attachment stuff, I think, is still the same. Whereas, like, she is, again, it's a fascinating experiment when you want to do it. We heard this with Vincent, we're like, isn't that real? It's like when me and Bridget were talking about this talk, it's like when your kid chooses to run from you, you shouldn't chase them because that rope is only so long. And so when they get to a point to where they're too far, they will come back. But if you chase them, then it's the same distance of rope that they have, and they're like they're running and you're running, and they're running and you're running. But if they run and you stay, they're only going to go so far, which is however far their attachment is that you've fed over time. But if you start walking back, it is wild. They almost have to start walking back because their rope is only so long. But again, like you guys have a rope of about 4 or 5 feet. I know. But it's not bad. Like it's not bad at all. But it's just it's very cool seeing that. And just again, I would just keep trying to feed it because you cannot make her feel too secure.
What am I doing wrong? Because it's literally just us all day long.
Yeah.
It's like I'm giving her constant. And then like I don't let her cry it out. You know, it's like what else does she need?
Yeah.
Like
just more time. More time and more connection, but you can't give her too much of it. Okay. And because you're giving it to her and she wants more, it doesn't mean that she's not getting enough. It's just like she is just asking for it because during this time, the biggest part of the brain, one of the biggest parts of the brain that's forming is the middle part, which is safety and security. And so that is where when the brain is at its most stressed, it goes back all the way down to the stuff that you're doing now. And so that's why this is so important because, and Bridget said this one time, and this was years ago, we're just like, and I think we probably heard it somewhere, we're just like, at this stage, many people are like, your rope is about 10 feet now. Many people at this stage are like, I can't wait to for them to be independent. But then when they're 12 and 13 and they have these problems, they don't want to come back to us. But like, if you can foster this now to where like, she feels securely attached to you in this window, then when she has big life things, when she's 13 and 15 and 17, then you want her to come back to you as opposed to going to her friends, because that's when things really fall apart. It's like you have big life decisions, you listen to your friends more than your parents.
That was like my key, like when having her, I was like, I want a really secure attachment. So it's like hard that maybe not that it's not enough, just I need
it's just you just have to keep feeding it. It is just like, I mean, it's what we talk about with chiropractic care, it's what we talk about with nutrition exercise. It's not like there's typically not a maximum capacity. It's like the more that you feed it, the more your bank account, the more that you feed it, the more you're going to get in return. If you stop feeding it, you're going you're going to stop getting the returns on that. And so for the attachment, the more that you feed it, the more it's eventually going to return back. But you have to just, it doesn't mean that it's because it's asking for more, that doesn't mean that you're not feeding it enough. Like, but just keep doing what you're doing, because it's going to, so, and again, like, she's up there and she's playing and she's fine. Like, she's not panicked, she doesn't feel alone, but like that independence can only come from you building that connection now.
Well, no.